Hello, this is Blake Rife, and this is Rife Farms. Today, since there is high wind, I thought I would do a voiceover versus me standing and trying to combat the wind and making you listen to all that noise. So, where we're at now is just north of the piece we were in last time. And we started on the west end, and we're moving from the west side to the east side. And you can see in the footage here of the pasture, most notably some of my fences need fixing. And then additionally, there is starting to get some green out there in the pasture. We're mid to late March right now, and the brome is coming up pretty decent. And so there should be some grazing here relatively soon. One of the problems we definitely got in this pasture is you can see cedar trees, clumps of cedar trees, and just some pretty steep hillsides. A lot of our farm, since we're close to the river, has got some pretty decent river hills, and so we need to probably look at factors related to erosion there. I think one of the things that we can do to make that better is get all those trees clipped off the hillside and try and get some higher quality grass to grow along those embankments, and then manage our grazing appropriately so that we're not creating more and more washouts. This is that was one of the two stock dams on the farm, and that waterway goes from that stock dam, and you can see down through those trees it leads to another stock dam. Those are two of the places that we use to water cattle in the summertime. And we're just continuing to drive right through the alfalfa field. Ragweed was an issue last year. I did spray some Tordon. I'm not super excited about that, but we're going to try that as a management technique and see how we like that. It was just a spot spray. Another little clump of cedar trees there on the hillside. Those are small enough we can walk around and get those clipped off with a tree shears or something of that nature. Let's see. I think we've got a pretty good payload here on the ground. I'd like to see a little bit more grass from last year on the ground, but there is no exposed dirt. So that's a pretty wonderful thing there. Now, we're continuing to the east here, driving along. Again, little cedar trees where the thick, dense trees are. That's another waterway. That creek is running all year long, which is fantastic. But we're still looking into some different water solutions to try and make it a little bit better on the cattle and try and get them so they're not standing down in the mud in the heat of the summer. And so we're exploring that. We had a grazing specialist come out yesterday to the farm. We did a little farm tour, walk around, trying to get some insights. And so we're going to spend this weekend kind of reviewing what we talked about and then kind of come up with a management plan. So there's the creek that goes through the trees that's running. It's not very big, it's not very wide, but it is very serviceable. This part of the pasture here is mostly brome grass. You can see that green is really starting to pop underneath there, and of course ragweed and cedar trees. So those are some things that we want to try and combat this year and see if our grazing practices help curb some of that weed infiltration. You know, something growing is better than nothing growing, but I would like to see a little higher quality forage. Particularly that brome grass is not my favorite. So this was there's two homesteads on this farm. This is about a 350 acre piece. So there was two building sites. This is one building site that burned down a couple of years ago. We had a fire start at the neighbor's house, and it rolled through our farm and took out some of the buildings there. The other homestead is pretty dilapidated also. That needs to be torn down and burned. Just make room for grass. So this is one hilltop, and this is a very interesting hilltop here. You're going to see a very definitive line. This is a segment where we had a creep feeder, and we were letting the cows kind of move around that creep feeder, and we were pivoting around that area so that we had access to the creep for the calves. And then as we move this way, you can see right now we transition to a much taller stand of native Big Blue, and it's you can see in the video here that it is standing, and I think we did a good job of managing there. We're trying to increase that blue, all those native grasses. They're just such fantastic grasses to stockpile, and the feed quality is very high. And I mean, the tame grasses, they grow pretty quick, but it's kind of tough to beat a good pasture of natives. In the upper half of the screen, you can see kind of that creek waterway. The slopes are pretty good on the side. They're not terrible bad. And hopefully we can maintain that without getting pretty big washouts. You can just see, though, where all those cedar trees took over, how those cliff faces just started to form. So eliminating those cedar trees is going to be a huge benefit, I think, to combating erosion on the farm. Still got good stands of natives here, a lot of Indian grass and some big bluegrass. Less of a problem with the cedars on this hilltop, and just really, this is one of my favorite pastures. This is the pasture that my grandfather bought a long time ago, and we more or less inherited and bought out the rest of the family. And it's just beautiful place. You know, I've been lucky enough to travel quite a bit in my life, and I am super fortunate to live in northeast Nebraska. And moving down through here, here's the creek again. We put in a crossing over this creek a couple of years ago, and that needs a little bit smoothing out, but it is functional. You can see where that old fire went through, and there's some logs there that didn't get burnt up all the way. So this would be the sort of the northwest corner, or starting towards the northwest corner of the property. And again, down here in these bottoms, we've got some pretty decent brome grass. It's starting to look pretty green down here. Wonderful tree. I just love that tree there. Great shade tree for the cattle, and it's big enough where they don't all have to loaf in one spot. We got some hardwoods here I'd like to eliminate, most notably as we kind of continue to move to the west. You can kind of see them on the top right corner of the screen. And we're going to get that grove out of there and try and clean up that hillside. I mean, trees are fantastic, but they've got their place.